Okay, so let's get started. Welcome, everybody. Now imagine this. It's crunch time. It's one of the busiest periods of the year. Everything comes down to this. This is where you need to rise to the challenge. This is when it counts. Now the expectations are high. So you go into work and it's busy. It's very busy. Either you close to the end of a project, to a deadline, or it's earnings season. As you go into work, you feel slightly agitated, but at the same time, you're also quite confident because you know you've got this. Lots of things going on, lots of demands, but you know exactly what you need to do. You need to deliver and constantly make decisions. You do. And almost all your decisions seem to work out. You feel absolutely great. At the end of the day, you close your day and you go home. You feel tired and fulfilled. And when you're at home, you're with your family. You can relax. You're tired, so you go to bed early. The next day, your alarm goes off early. Immediately, you jump out of bed. Another challenging day, but you look forward to it because you know you've got this. You're successful, fulfilled, and happy. Now, this doesn't have to be an imagination. This could be your reality. And hopefully, by the end of this call, you know exactly how to do that. So my name is Bastian van Wielen. I used to work as equity sales at Morgan Stanley and Citi. I left the financial services industry in 2020 to pursue a career in coaching. I mainly focus on career and on peak performance. Now, I did numerous of peak performance and flow coaching courses at leading institutions in this field. And now I can call myself a peak performance expert. Now, most of the things that you're going to hear today are deeply grounded in science. So I have no doubt that this will help you. So let's jump in. We have 3 goals for today. We want to make a plan, to make big step forwards in 3 things. First, how you perform your best when it matters most. Secondly, how you manage pressure and make it work for you. And thirdly, how you switch off at the end of the day and leave work behind. Now, this session is going to be practical. You should have a workbook. You can either find it, as I said, in the email that I sent, or you can find it at the top of the chat. Now, during the call, I will explain a few concepts. And I'm going to ask you to reflect on this and see how it applies to you. And you can write down some of the answers to the questions that I'll give in the workbook or at the piece of paper. It doesn't really matter. And this workbook or piece of paper will form the basis for the plan you're going to make to perform better, master pressure, and be able to let go and recover after work. Now, by the end of the session, you're going to walk away with a clear set of actions you can implement immediately. Because the goal is not to listen. The goal is to start making your own plan as we go. Now, to get there are 4 parts to what we're going to discuss today. The first part, we're going to start with flow and peak performance. What is flow, why it matters, and how it works. Now, this part may be a little bit more theoretical, but is required to better understand the other concepts later on. So bear with me for the first part, as part 2 to 4 will be very practical. After peak performance and flow, in part 2, we're going to look at pressure, how you can manage this and how you can make sure that it becomes your friend and not your worst enemy. Then we're going to move into structure and planning, i.e. how to structure your day so you can actually perform. And finally, we will look at how you close your day at the end of the day and how you switch off from work, spend quality time with your family, and how to recover so you're able to go all in the next day. But before we start, I would like to ask you 3 questions. And these are the first 3 questions in the workbook. And what I want you to do is I want you to write them down in the workbook, but also in the chat. And these some of them in the chat. And these questions are the following. Question number 1. Give yourself a score between 1 and 10 on how you rate yourself on how you are doing on peak performance, pressure management, structure your week, and your ability to switch off at home. So for those 4, what score do you give yourself? And then the follow-up question is, in which of these 4 categories would you like to make the biggest progression? And the third question is, are you committed to learn from this goal and create a better career and life by answering the questions and implementing the biggest takeaway? So I now would like to ask you to write down the questions to question number 2. Which of these 4 categories you like to make the biggest progression? And question number 3, are you committed? So if possible, write them down in the chat. I'd be very curious to see which category you like to make the most progression in, and if you're committed to realize this. So is it going to be in peak performance, in pressure management, in structure, or ability to switch off? I'm very curious to find who's got the most courage to write something in the chat. Now, to be clear, we're not going to discuss them, but I would like to understand where you focus at. So what I'm not going to do during this whole call is take people for a one-on-one. So it's only going to be discussions in the chat. Okay? So nobody's got the courage yet. Okay. Switching off, rest, and fully recover. Thanks, Nersetan. Thanks, Jan-Erik. Peak performance of 3, pressure management of 2. Okay, this is going to be very useful for you, Jan-Erik. Very useful. Good. So let's jump in then. We're going to start with the part about peak performance and flow state. And let me start with a simple question. Have you ever had a moment where you felt fully focused, where it felt as you were completely absorbed in what you were doing, that everything else just seemed to disappear, that you became one with the activity, where time seemed to pass very differently versus normal, where you worked for hours, but it felt like 5 minutes, where decisions felt almost automatic and effortless, even though what you were doing was hard? And if so, then you were in flow state. And if we want to deliver our best work when it matters most, it's important to understand flow state and how to access it. Now, before I'm going to explain more about flow, I have a simple question for you. A question you can answer on slide 3 of the workbook and in the chat. Recall a great moment in flow. What were you doing? We're going to work with this later on, so it's important to know something. Even if you don't write it in the chat, make sure you have something in your head. Okay, so about flow, what's important to understand is that flow is biological. In flow, your neurochemistry changes as happy molecules start flowing through your body, stress chemicals leave your body, and your brain waves change. Now, flow was first described by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi as a state of optimal consciousness, a state where you're fully involved in the activity in the here and now, and where action and awareness merged, and where nothing else seemed to matter. And what is important to understand is this: flow is not just a nice feeling; it's a performance state. So let's quickly explain what flow can do for you. So let's talk about the impact of flow. What is the impact of the biological changes happening in your body? It gives a boost to physical performance and to cognitive performance. When it comes to physical performance, the change in the chemistry leads to increased strength, improve muscle reaction time, and deaden pain. So basically, you become faster, stronger, and you can go on for longer. But as I said, also cognitive performance goes up. Motivation goes up. Creativity goes up, which gives you the tools to solve complex problems. Learning skyrockets, and productivity goes through the roof. McKinsey did a 10-year study, and they found that top executives are five times more productive in flow than out of flow. So if you want to have a competitive advantage, get more into flow. So this raises the question, how do we get into flow? Because that is what we need when we need to be at our best, when it matters most, when it's really busy. We need to get more into flow. So how do we do that? To start with the good news, flow is hackable. There are ways to get into flow. And these ways to get into flow are called flow triggers. And I'm going to show you here. And I'm going to very briefly touch on that, because that's not the heart of this workshop. So flow triggers basically are preconditions that can help you drop into flow, as they help you drive attention and full focus on the task at hand in the present moment. It's important to understand that flow follows focus. So you get into flow when you have to fully focus on the task. Let me give you 3 quick examples of these flow triggers and how they work. The first one is clear goals, so internal number 5. You need to know exactly what you're doing or what you try to achieve. No second guessing on what you have to do. So full dedication because you know what you have to do and how. That leads to flow. That's a clear goal flow trigger. The second one is risk. When there's something at stake, your attention will sharpen. You will fully focus because you have to get this right. And the third one that I want to mention is what I call the VUCA flow trigger. This is a combination of a few flow triggers. So VUCA, as you may know, stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And this is exactly the environment in which many of you operate, especially when you're financial services and in markets. Markets move, information changes, patterns need to be recognized in real time. And the combination of VUCA with clear goals and real consequences is a real nice stacking of flow triggers. This is why in these environments, when managed well, people experience the highest level of flow. Okay, now think back of your experience in flow. What were the triggers there, i.e. what got you into flow? So please fill this in on slide 3 of the workbook. And if you have the courage, leave them in the chat as well. So you can leave in the chat what flow triggers work for you or you think that work for you. I'm curious to find out. 2 things actually. 1, who's got the courage to fill it in, and 2, what the flow triggers are that work very well for you. For example, in the flow moment that you thought of. I know this is a hard question, so maybe I'll give later some time for you to get back at this. So I'll quickly move on, and then later we can circle back to this. Thanks, Chris. Okay. So now let's look at the other side of the equation. So flow triggers are preconditions that help you drop into flow, as they help us drive attention to the task at hand in the present moment. Now there's a flip side to this, and these are flow blockers. These are things that pull you out of flow. They pull you away from the task at hand in the present moment. And if you want to be at our best when it matters most, we need to avoid these flow blockers like the plague. There are 8 of them. I will briefly mention them. I won't go into detail on all of them, but I'll discuss the most important one. And those 8 are distractions. If you're being distracted, you're being pulled away from the here and now. Unclear, when it's not clear what you have to do, or ambiguity. Unclarity, when you don't know what to do, it's hard to focus because you don't know what to focus on. Mismatch and challenge skills. I'll explain that a bit later. Fear of judgment or perfectionism. If you have this, then you're worried about the there and then, and therefore you can't be in the here and now. Lack of recovery or burnout. Also, they will be explained later. Low autonomy or misalignment. Emotional dysregulation and overstimulation. Now I have some questions for you, which you can fill in on slide number 4. And leave the answers in the chat below. The first question is, which of these flow blockers do you think most people suffer from the most? What is the flow blocker, the most important flow blocker for most people, and why? And the second question is, what is the biggest flow blocker for you? And so that first question, what do you think is the most important flow blocker for most people? I would be curious to find out. I'll be curious to find out what you think that is. What's the most important flow blocker for most people out of these 8? Seven and 8, overstimulation, yeah. Lack of recovery, yeah. Fear of judgment. Mismatch and challenge skills, yeah, thanks. Okay. For me, number 1. Okay, well, we have a winner. Okay, so the biggest flow blocker for most people is distraction. And there are 2 elements to this. 1, we are our own worst distractor. And 2, we distract ourselves through our mobile phone. Now in the flow program, I have a full video on your mobile phone. But I want to keep it to 3 environmental tips to block the flow blockers and set up an environment so you can deliver your best work. So here are 3 tips. Tip number 1, clear the clutter. Make sure you work from a clean desk. Remove all unnecessary objects and papers. Keep your desk minimal. Any piece of paper or other things on your desk can pull you out of flow. It can distract you. So therefore, and here's tip number 2, remove all visual triggers. Turn off extra monitors. So if you work with multiple screens, put all the screens off except the one you're working on. Only keep the active task visible. Make sure nothing comes through. This includes pop-ups for emails or chat systems like Bloomberg, IB Chat, Slack messaging, and definitely no WhatsApp on your computer, please. Okay, tip number 3, and this might surprise you, headphones. I highly recommend using noise cancelling headphones. And yes, even when you work from home by yourself. And there are 3 reasons for the headphone. Number 1, obviously, is to protect you from noise and keeps the distraction out. If you get distracted and pulled out of flow, it usually takes at least 20 minutes to get back into a flow state. So keep the noise out. The second reason is colleagues or family. If you got your headphones on, it's a signal to them. They know you can't be disturbed unless it's really urgent. And the third reason, headphones can create a Pavlovian effect. When I started to work, when I started my flow journey, I used to have my headphones around my neck, and I would start working. And where it felt I got close to flow, I put them on. And like the salivating dog in the Pavlov experience, I immediately drop into flow. So it's a very good sort of physical cue for you to drop into flow. Okay, so now a question for slide number 4 and on the chat. What are you committed to do to have more flow by blocking your flow blockers? What are things that you can do to make sure you have less things blocking your flow? And then you can look at things around these flow blockers, but also the 3 things that I mentioned here. So what can you do? I'm curious to find out, what can you do to make sure you're being less exposed to flow triggers, to flow blockers, sorry. I know this is a hard question. And by the way, if it's close to your birthday, you should have an idea for a birthday present, right? Yeah, that's a very good one, Chris. Very good one. That's something, by the way, that will come back later as well. So keep this one in mind. And thanks for adding this. Okay, let's move to the next part. So we talked about performance and flow, which was part number 1. This is part number 2. It says part number 1, my mistake. So let's make it a little bit more practical. And we're going to start with the first of the 3 levers that you can pull to be your best when it matters most. And this is pressure management. Let's go. Okay, we know this guy, right? Gordon Gekko. And in the movie or film, whatever you want to call it, Wall Street, he had a great quote. And the quote was, "Pressure is good. Pressure makes you alert. Pressure gets you to focus. And pressure leads to your best work." But at the same time, it can also be a double-edged sword. So in this part, we're going to talk about how pressure can be your best friend, how pressure can be your worst enemy, and how to shift it from your worst enemy to your best friend. Now, one quick question, slide number 4 of the workbook, and in the chat, please. When it comes to pressure right now, is pressure A, your friend, B, your enemy, or C, a bit of both, depending on the situation? Plus, where would you like to be at the end of the workshop? So I would very much appreciate a, B, or C answer. Yeah, a C for most people, an A for Jan Erik. Good, thanks. Good. Okay, here we go. Now I want to induce, and this is also why I explained flow. That will become clear now why I started with flow. I will start this part by explaining the golden rule of flow and the most important flow trigger. And this one is called the challenge skills balance, or the golden rule of flow. Now have a look at this chart. You have your skill set on the x-axis and your challenge on the y-axis. If you're all the way at the bottom right, your skill set is high, and you're very good at something, and your challenge is low. So then it's easy. And when things are easy, you don't need full attention to get the job done. And therefore, because there's no full focus, you will not be able to drop into flow. And actually, the task may be quite boring and easy. On the other hand, let's say if you're on the left, on the top left, the challenge is high, but your skill set is low. Now this is overwhelming and you won't be able to get it done. You'll be anxious and you have too much stress chemicals in your body to drop into flow. So you enter into flow when the challenge is at the very edge of your current skill set. That's when you drop into flow. where it stretches you, but it doesn't overwhelm you. It's where you need all your attention, all your focus, and full concentration to do it. That's when you hit flow. If something's too easy, you get bored and you don't need full focus. If something's too hard, you get anxious and your mind starts to think about the consequences instead of the task. And flow sits right in between in this flow channel. Now, there are two sides to this. The first one is technical. Can you actually do this? Do you have the skill set to do it? But the second one is mental. Do you feel safe enough to focus? Quick example, Alex Hanold, who's climbing El Capitan without any ropes. He's got technical skills and he feels safe. Now, there are lots of other climbers who also climb El Capitan, but they do it with ropes. Why? Because they don't feel safe enough to do it without. So if they would do it without, they would get too scared and would actually fall down and they would die. So because you're technically capable of it, but if you're worried about the consequences, you will not be present. Your attention shifts away from the task and flow becomes impossible. And that is why pressure management is so critical. That's why we come to this later. But for now, understand this. Busy periods like earnings season or end of a project often create the perfect conditions for flow. High challenge, high demand, and the need for focus. Which means that these periods are not just stressful, they're your biggest opportunities to perform at your best. Okay, when the pressure is high, two things you need to understand. Two things can happen. One, you can get anxious, which will impair your energy and performance, or you can drop it to flow. Now, if we're getting anxious, there's something we need. And what we need is a state change. Now, how do we get a state change? That's by pressure management. And what we need for pressure management? We need two things. We need to understand the key principle, and secondly, we need to understand the key tools at our disposal. And now we'll take you through the key principle first and then discuss a few tools. Let's go. Okay, the core principle is the following. The breath rules the body, and the body rules the mind. Which means this: you cannot think your way out of an anxious state. You have to change your physiology first. Now, when the breath slows, your body calms. And when your body calms, your mind can follow. So let's look at a few of these tools. First about the breath, then about the body, then about the mind. That's the key to pressure management. And this is how you go from an over-aroused state, an anxious state, into a calm state where you can drop into flow. So here we go. As I said, the fastest way for a state change is through the breath. And you have two options here. The first one is the physiological sigh. And the physiological sigh is a double inhale followed by a long exhale. Now, first, let me start by two things that are key for the breath to calm down. The first principle is the exhale needs to be longer than the inhale. This is a signal to the system that it's safe, and therefore your stress chemicals will leave your body and adrenaline will immediately be reduced. And the second principle is that in breathing in, you want to move your belly forward rather than your diaphragm up. If you put your diaphragm up, adrenaline will be released. And you want to get less adrenaline in your system. So first, let me start with the physiological sigh. So that's a deep breath in through the nose. And at the very end, you take another sip of air in and then a long exhale through the mouth. So let me show that to you. So it's deep in, sip at the end, And then a long exhale through the mouth. And already feel calmer after one. If you do it 3 times, you'll be completely calm. Um, the second one is called the 4-7-8 breathing technique, where you breathe in for 4, you hold for 7, and you exhale for 8. So again, you see 4 in, 8 out. That means your exhale is much longer. Okay, let me show you once. Okay, so initially my idea was to do one together, but I'll trust you that you understand how these work. And again, when you're live on this call, you can request the replay and then you can see it and try it for yourself. Or you can look on YouTube, Physiological Psi, Andrew Huberman, or 4-7-8, and you can start practicing yourself. And I have a present at the end, by the way, where I can help you go over this. But those are the 2 breaths you can use to immediately calm yourself down. Once you've done that, you can go to the body. And in the body, what we want to do here is we want to induce a so-called relaxation response. Now, there are ways to induce a relaxation response. There are passive ones and there are active ones. Let me start with the passive ones and mention them. TM, Transcendental Meditation. This is mantra meditation. Very good academic research, also out of Harvard, who basically were the ones who found the relaxation response. Out of Harvard, a transcendental meditation. I'm doing this. It's really good. The most important one, if there's one thing you want to remember from this whole call, or if there are 2 things, and one is the physiological side breathing, the second one is yoga nidra. Yoga nidra are very deeply relaxing, guided body scan meditations. You can find them on YouTube, Cheap Soy Karaoke, or the mindfulness movement. They've got some wonderful yoga nidra meditations. They're unbelievably good. And the third one is gratitude meditation. So on the left, you see here me doing a yoga nidra, and on the right, this is a TM meditation, or normally my head falls down when I do a TM. But anyway, so those are the passive protocols. But now I want to go to the active protocols. And let me first explain the mechanics behind inducing a relaxation response through an active protocol. So we'll first do something together, and then I'll explain. So when I mention a certain muscle or part of your body, I want you to tighten it, to put all the tension into that body until I say stop. Okay? So ready. Okay, so squeeze your feet, your lower leg, your calves, your upper leg, squeeze them. Squeeze your abs, squeeze your back, squeeze your chest and your shoulders, your hands, squeeze your hands, your neck, your jaw. Okay, your head, squeeze it, hold, hold, let go, and close your eyes. And if you just squeeze, you'll feel the relaxation come over you. Now, this is the relaxation response. So what you do to induce this is you put a little bit of strain on your body. So basically, temporarily, you increase the pressure, so you can relax more after that. And there are a few ways you can induce a relaxation response. So the one we just did, so tightening every muscle in your body and then letting go, holding and then letting go. But other ones, for example, are walking, preferably in nature, definitely outside, and definitely not with your phone present. Other ones are stretching or yoga. In yoga poses, you stretch out your body, which puts a mild stress in your body, and afterwards you get a relaxation response. That's why you feel so good after yoga. Cold exposure, like cold showers or ice bath, really good active protocols. But there's also warm exposure, like sunshine exposure or sauna, tomo breathing, like Wim Hof breathing, or mindfulness meditation. Mindfulness is a hybrid between a passive and an active. It's you still have to focus, so it's not a total relaxation. It's a hybrid. Okay, so now that we've talked about some of the breathing techniques and some of the passive and active protocols, I want to know. I want to know from you which ones do you want to try out? And please leave a comment in the chat. Which ones do you like to try out? It's going to be 478. It's going to be physiological sigh. Is it going to be one of the meditations? Maybe walking, stretching. I'm very curious to see who's going to write down ice bath or cold exposure. I probably know one person, by the way, but this person is not allowed to answer ice bath because he's already doing that. So that's new. That's not new. So who wants to share? Walking, good. Very good. Okay, so let's move on to the next bit. So now we've calmed the breath, we calmed the body, we now want to calm the mind. So once your body starts to settle, your mind will follow. And in this state, your intrusive thoughts will subside. And if they don't, you can work with them. Because when you're calm enough, you become rational again. And you can challenge thoughts by going through a series of questions that are also in the workbook, but I'm going to talk you through that now. So let's say a thought comes in, something you used to worry about. The first question you're going to ask yourself is, what is my worst case? And how likely is this scenario is going to play out? The second question is, what is the most logical and most likely outcome? With question number 1 and number 2 combined, you should have a little bit more perspective. And question number 3 is, now if the worst would happen, if it would materialize, what would you do? And what would be the most likely outcome of this? Question 4, are you comfortable with this outcome? If yes, then you're done. If you're not comfortable with it, you go back to question number 3. So if this would happen, what would you do then? And again, would you be comfortable with that? Yes, you're done. No, you go back here until you end up here. Okay? So please note, only work with these questions when your body and mind are truly calm. Otherwise, if you're still agitated, if you're still anxious, you will only further trigger the fight or flight response. You will get anxious and you will not be able to find the answers you're looking for, and you'll get into a downward spiral. So there's a disclaimer to this exercise. Okay, so let's make it a little bit more practical. So let's say you're in the office and suddenly you feel overwhelmed, but you've been embarrassed to lie down on the floor in the middle of the floor and do a yoga nidra or make noise of the physiological sigh, and you can't afford to go outside to take a walk for 30 minutes. What can you do then? Very simple. You go to the gents or the ladies. Now don't go into the wrong one, because then your state will get even worse. So you go in, you sit down on the toilet, you close your eyes, and you do a short meditation. Take a few minutes for example, mindfulness or TM meditation. What you could do is you could do 10 minutes of daily calm or 5 minutes of semi-guided headspace. They're very good, by the way. And when you start this meditation, you start with 3 to 5 physiological sigh breathings and then do a gentle body scan. Okay. So these are very good apps, Daily Calm and Headspace. So my wife took this picture and asked me what I wanted to use it for. And she told me, please don't put this in there. You would look stupid. Now, normally I listen to my wife, but I didn't do it this time. Okay, let me tell you what else helps to make it even better and even more powerful and stronger. while sitting, lean against the wall. Press your shoulder blades against the wall. And now imagine your parents and grandparents standing behind you, supporting you. Imagine the right hand of your father on your right shoulder and the left hand of your mother on your left shoulder. And imagine your system standing behind you. And softly whisper, I'm safe. I'm okay. I've got this. No doubt you feel calm in a matter of minutes and ready to go back into flow and be at your best now that it matters most. Now, a quick question to you. And this is, by the way, only for you. So it's a personal question. So therefore, I do not want any responses in the chat, but this is something for you to fill in the workbook. If you need a quick reboot whilst in the office, what are you going to do and where? So think of this and write it down, but do not share it in the chat. Even though I shared this picture, you don't need to share it. You need to share your answer. Okay, so that was pressure management. Let's move to the third part, and it's going to be progressively more practical from here. And the third part of this workshop, and the second lever you can pull to be at your best when it matters most, is structure. So how do you structure your day so it actually works? And here we're going to talk about 4 things. The first thing is creating clarity before you start. We're going to talk about what you are going to do. Then, working in your flow windows. When are you at your best? And then thirdly, structuring your day in focus and recovery cycles. How you're going to work. And finally, closing your day so you can truly switch off. Let's go. So starting with clarity. Flow requires clarity before you start. If you begin your day reacting, you lose control of your attention. So before you start, you want to be clear on what today is about. We want to know what is our top 3. We should be able to answer the question, what are the top 3 things that matter most today? So what are the 3 things that needs to be done to call this day a success? What is the focus for today? And as we will discuss later, these questions you don't want to ask yourself and answer them first thing in the morning. No, you want to ask and answer the day before. So just before you go home. But I'll come back to this a bit later. So when you have your top 3, the second question then becomes, when will you work on your top 3 goals? This is about structuring your day. Now, in this workshop, we're not going deep into reverse engineering and the neuroscience of optimal planning. But I do want you to understand and work with one thing, flow proneness. Now, flow proneness is your ability to enter flow easily and often. And this is strongly linked to your biology. During the day, there are moments when your brain is sharp, focused, and ready. And there are times when you're not. Now, everybody has natural peak windows, flow windows. If you use these windows for deep work, everything becomes easier. If you miss it, everything becomes harder. So it's important to understand that when during the day you're at your sharpest, this is your flow window. Okay, so before I explain this, think for yourself, when do you think your flow window is? No need to write down in the chat, and I'll come back with a question later. So let me show you what this looks like for me. So I've made some nice colors for the day. So for me, I am most flow prone. This is green. early in the morning. In the morning until 12, and then mid-afternoon. Oh, so, and I'm absolutely useless between 12 and 3 and after 8. So it might be that my performance will drop a little bit later today, but we will see. So let me talk you through my day today as I was preparing for this workshop. So I got up at 6:15 and I started work at 6:20. This is deep work time. I worked on LinkedIn content and preparing for this presentation. I took a few breaks in between and a breakfast at 10:30. That is when my flow proneness started to become a little bit lower. But this period is my most important period when I do the most work and I don't want to be distracted. Now at 12, my flow proneness came down. So I had a client call at 12. So my flow proneness is there at a 6. So I struggle with flow and deep work, but I'm in good enough shape to do a client call. At 1 o'clock, I went to Fit 20 for a workout. I walked to the gym and walked back whilst listening to the recording of this presentation. A great way to use my low flow proneness time. Sometimes I do administration in this. Sometimes if I need to do groceries, this is when I do it. Okay. Between 3 and 15:40, I did LinkedIn. Then I took a break. And at 4 till 6, my flow proneness was much higher. And I did the last piece of preparation for this workshop. As you see right now, I'm at a 6, so I might struggle towards the end. I hope this gives you a little bit understanding on how to plan around flow proneness and how I plan around flow proneness. So now my question to you, question for page number 7 of the workbook. When are you at your best? When are you most flow prone? And when are you least flow prone? What do you think? And there are 2 things to know, by the way. Flow proneness is personal, although there are 3 groups. There are larks who are very good early in the morning, like me, between 6 and 9. There are third birds. They're probably at their best between 9 and 12. And there are night owls who are better late in the day. So you can test, by the way, which group you are, and based on that, what would work for you. But that's not the what we're going into on this call. So if you want to, you can leave in the chat. What do you think are your best hours? Yeah. So Hasib is probably a lark, and Nursultan, yeah, this is the sweet spot for the third birds. So thanks for sharing this. And also think for yourself, what do you want to do in your most flow prone hours? What do you want to do in your least flow prone hours? Okay. So the third part about structuring your day is to focus on recovery cycles. In part 1, we talked about what, part 2 about when, and this is about how. So in part 2 I already mentioned flow proneness, i.e. your ability to drop into flow, but there's one more element that you need to consider. And that is the fact that flow state or performance requires energy. As you're in flow, you tap into the reservoir of energy reserves. And over time, your reservoir of energy reserves becomes depleted. So after a while, it's empty and it needs to be refilled. Now, flow follows a cycle. It starts with struggle, then it goes into relief, then flow, and then recovery. Now, recovery is probably the most important and most underestimated part of flow. If you do not recover well, you simply do not have enough energy for another flow state. Now, the key thing to take away from this is that you want to live like a lion. Now, what do I mean by that? We're aiming for binary work. The lion sprints to kill its prey, eats, and then rests completely. Nothing in between. For us, it should be the same. Periods of full focus work and then real recovery. When you work, you go all in. When you take breaks, you take a real break. Not your phone, no stimulation. Because this doesn't help you recover. In fact, things like your mobile phone further deplete your reservoir of energy instead of that it's being refilled. So instead, step away, grab a coffee. Good research, by the way, on coffee, caffeine, and flow state. So grab a coffee, go outside, go for a walk, do a bit of breath work or meditation. So your ability to get into another flow state depends on how well you recover. The fourth part about structuring, and this is we're going to make also the bridge into the final part of this workshop. The fourth part of structuring your day is how you finish your day. Because the way you end your workday determines whether you can actually switch off. Now, most people don't close their workday. They just stop. They finish a task, they look at the clock, and they walk away. So when they get home, their body's at home, but their mind is still in the office. If you want to switch off, you need to close the loops. So before you leave, take a few minutes, look back, and ask yourself, what went well today? Then, did I do my top 3? Did I get everything done? If yes, great. If no, no problem. Move it to tomorrow, put it in the planning for tomorrow. Then we're going to look forward. What is my top 3 for tomorrow? What are the most important things to do? The top 3 for tomorrow. Then, when will I do them? How will I approach them? Now, this does 2 things. First of all, it gives you a sense of completion. Second of all, it removes the mental load that would otherwise follow you home. Because your brain now no longer needs to hold on to it. And now you're ready to actually let go. So if you want to have a great evening and spend 3, 4, 5 hours with people you love doing things that you enjoy, those 4 or 5 hours of quality time only will cost you 5 to 10 minutes of staying longer in the office to do all this. Now, what I do as well, by the way, I make sure my email box is completely empty. So now a question for you. Are you committed to close the day well so you can spend quality time at home and be able to fully recover the next day? And what is your end of day ritual going to look like? Think about it, and you can write this down in page number 7 of the workbook. So what are you going to do? Are you going to ask the questions, what went well, the top 3 wrap up, and a planning for tomorrow? Okay, let's move on to the next bit, the final bit. So we talked about flow, we talked about peak performance, we talked about managing pressure and structuring your day in the office, but we haven't talked about home yet. That's what we're going to do now. And the thing is, if you do not let go after work, you do not really recover. And if you do not really recover, you come back the next day with less energy, less focus, less patience, less flow proneness. And that is why recovery is not a luxury. It's an absolute requirement. And this is going to show you how to do that. Because what you really want is you want to be able to go home, not think about work anymore. Do fun stuff with the people you love and sleep well so you recover the next day and go full in. And this may sound too good to be true, but it doesn't have to be this way. And I'll explain to you how. So to master this, we need to master 4 things. 1, close your workday, which we just discussed. Secondly, protect your evening attention using windows. Thirdly, calm your system in the evening. And fourthly, start the next day well. So let's start with protecting your time in the evening. Okay. I want to start with a double question. Why is it important for you to protect your evening? And who are you doing this for? So this is in page number 8 of the workbook. This is a personal question, so it's not to share in the chat. But again, why is it important to protect your evening? And who are you doing this for? Okay. So to protect your evening, you need to work with windows. And let me explain this by telling you about an investment banker that I work with. So he used to go home every evening to have dinner with his family around 7, or at least try to go home. Didn't work every evening, but most of the evenings he was home at 7 to have dinner with his family. Now he's an MD, but his team, the directors, the VPs, the associates, the analysts, they were still working. So he was at home, but he was physically at home. Mentally, he was in the office. He wasn't paying attention to his kids at the dinner table. He was on his phone the whole time. After dinner, he constantly got pulled towards his phone, and he didn't have any quality time with his family. So we started to work with Windows. Now when he comes home, he puts his phone away. He puts his phone in the office that he has in the basement. No phone with him during dinner. No phone during the bedtime routine with his kids. But at 8:15, after his kids are in bed, he goes to his office to check his emails and do anything that is required. He aims to work for no more than 15 minutes, unless something urgent has come up. Now, this does two things. Between coming home at 6:30 and 8:15, he's relaxed, he can be present. He isn't worried about missing anything because he knows he's going to come back to it. And in that short time frame, nothing can really go wrong because he knows I'm going to get to it in time. So he can relax during the window before 8:15 and then work at the window between 8:15 and 8:30. After 8:15, he's done. He's done for the day. He can relax, watch some TV with his wife, and he knows that everything's been checked. So instead of being half present all evening, he's now fully present with his family and fully off afterwards, and he knows everything is done. So my questions for you on page number 8. Do you need windows? Think of what would be a good time for you to have your work window. Where are you going to put your phone during the non-work windows? And what's a good place to work during your windows? I'll leave this for you to think of and write down. No need to write it in the chat. And there's got an opportunity for you to discuss this with me one-on-one, and I'll come back to that later. So that's protecting your evening using Windows. Another element, a third element of switching off and recovering at home is calming your system in the evening. This is crucial for a good recovery and hence ample flow the next day. To keep it simple, I've got 4 suggestions, and I won't go into the detail of the neuroscience here, but just the following. Number 1, no stimulation, one exception. I'll come to that in a minute. No stimulation, that means no alcohol, no coffee, and no scary movies or Netflix series, because that will trigger the wrong chemicals in your body. Not constantly checking your phone. Put it away. Yeah, it's distracting you and it's giving you the light that you don't want, making it difficult to go to sleep. Then, third thing, just before going to bed, do some breath work, do a guided body scan, or do a yoga nidra. Personally, I always fall asleep with the yoga nidra. And final thing, what you can do is a short reflection or gratitude journaling. Ask yourself, what went well today? What am I grateful for? So for example, what do I do before going to bed? After I brush my teeth, I do some yoga stretches. Then I go up, I go in bed, I take my journal, I write down things that went well and things that I went grateful for. Then I put on my sleep mask and do a yoga nidra and fall asleep that way. Okay, what is the exception that I was alluding to? And this might surprise you, but I'm going to say it. It is sex. Sex is great for your biology. It induces a relaxation response and it optimizes your biochemistry so you can sleep very well. Okay? So question for you. 3 questions for page 9. Would calming down in the evening be beneficial to you? What is the first thing you want to try out? And we're not talking about the exception here. We want to talk about one of the other 4 things. What's the first thing you want to try out? And after that, what do you want to try out? And how are you going to make sure you stick to this? Again, these are for yourself now. Let's move off to the final one. And the final one is how you start your next day. I love this saying. I know this from Robin Sharma. The way you start your day sets the foundation for the rest of your day. You want to get your body primed for peak performance. Now, there's a lot of neuroscience behind it, but I'm not going into this right now. I want to leave you with 3 suggestions and a bonus. Suggestion number 1. Start with some active movement, either on the treadmill or do some yoga stretches. For example, 3 sun salutations. So yoga is a great one to wake up in the morning, or just stretching your body when you wake up. Just get your heart rate up, stretch your body, and there you go. Suggestion number 2, and this is absolutely my number 1 tip. Take a cold shower. A cold shower activates your system. It increases your stress tolerance, so it's very good for stress management as well. Not just incidental, but structural stress tolerance goes up. And it makes it easier to fall asleep in the evening. It has to do with your biochemistry that's being triggered, which makes it easier to fall asleep in the evening. Suggestion number 3, no coffee in the first 90 minutes of waking up, preferably not for 9 a.m. And as a bonus, if possible, seek the sunlight as early as possible. Again, 3 questions. How could adding a couple of things in the morning be a great boost to your day? And think, what is the maximum time you want to spend on this? And what would you like to try tomorrow? What will be the difference between waking up at 5:15 and 5:10 or 5:05? And what benefits could you have from this? What will be the benefit if you wake up a few minutes earlier to do some yoga stretches, to take a cold shower, and therefore you sleep better the next evening? Okay. So what are the conclusions? And what should enable you to be present and relaxed at home so you can have quality time with your family and recover so you can go on the next day? Firstly, close the day before you go home, i.e. plan your next day. Secondly, protect your time using windows. Thirdly, calm yourself down in the evening for peaceful and good resting using relaxation techniques. And finally, start the morning well for optimized energy, focus, and good sleep in the evening. So conclude, we are all going to face busy periods, moments where the pressure is high, where the workload increases, and where we need to be our best. And we want to be at our best when it matters most. We want to find flow when it matters. And to do this, we need 3 things. First, pressure management. How you manage your state through the breath, the body, and the mind. Because Gordon Gekko is right. Pressure is good, but only if it works for you. So the goal is not to reduce pressure, but make it work for you. The second thing is structure. Creating clarity in your day and doing the work, the most important work, when you're at your best. And third, recovery. How you switch off, how you manage your time at home, because this determines how you show up the next day. And if you get these 3 things right, things change. You go to work with energy, you stay focused all day, you leave in time, able to switch off. And the result of all of this will be a better career, and a better life outside of work. And when you follow this, pressure stops being something you fight and becomes something that drives your performance. So I have 2 final questions for now for the workbook. What are your biggest takeaways from this workshop? And what are you going to implement right away? And at the end, I'm going to ask you to share this in the chat. Finally, there's a page number 12. And this is for after the meeting or for tomorrow. This is to make a game plan. Go through the slide number 2 through 11 for the answers. And on page number 12, make the plan to upgrade your life and your career. And because you joined this call, I've got a special gift for you. If you want to, we can discuss how these 4 parts apply to you. We can go over this workbook together, because what might have happened, you might have some questions. You might wonder how this could work for you. You might see a few obstacles that could get in the way of implementing this. And in that case, and you want to discuss, I offer a free 1-hour call in which we'll discuss the implementation of this. And you can book a call using the link that I'm going to put in the chat right now. There it is. You can book a call there. The only thing is, this offer only stands until the end of tomorrow. So tomorrow at midnight. So be quick if you want to have a free, no strings attached call to discuss what we discussed during this call. Okay, 2 more things we covered today. So you can start implementing this immediately and you will see the difference. But a lot of these things here were quite tactical. They were practical and tactical. However, something that will help as well to elevate your life and your career is strategy. And strategy is what we'll cover in a follow-up session, where we're going to look at the psychology of peak performance, as well as be more strategic in longer-term planning and execution. And I'll probably host this call late May, early June. And finally, because you joined this call, I have another monster of an offer for you. Because I have a flow program where we go through flow step by step. Now, this is a DIY program that you can follow on your own in your own time at your own pace. This program consists of 9 videos ranging from 11 minutes to 30 minutes. We go in depth in flow triggers, technology, flow cycle, flow proneness, procrastination, everything. And at the end, you have the knowledge and the tools to raise flow in your life and your career and be at your best, both at home and at work. Now, normally, the investment into this online program is 1,210 euros. But because you joined, I can offer this only for 195. Again, this only applies until the end of tomorrow evening. If you want this, send me a DM or send me an email so we can arrange something. If you do a call, if you take a call with me after this, then I'll make you this offer again, and then it will apply till the next day after our call. So basically, that is it. I want to thank you very much for your attention. And what I want now, if you want to, I want to know from you 2 things. 1, if you can write down in the chat what your biggest takeaway is, or what you're going to implement tomorrow. Or if you have any questions, you can leave them in the chat. Thank you very much. I'm curious to find out what you're going to write down.